Picture yourself as a woman who's been in relationships where everything seemed to align. The chemistry was there, the conversations flowed easily, and your dreams felt in sync. And then, out of nowhere, he pulled away emotionally. Or worse, he stayed physically present but mentally checked out. You're left questioning, what truly makes a man fall in love? What creates a bond deeper than attraction or routine? Most women are taught that love is built through effort, constant care, affection, and devotion. And while those things matter, what many don't see, and where Carl Jung gives us profound insight, is that true love doesn't begin on the surface. It begins deep in the unconscious mind. What stays a man's heart isn't always obvious. It's not in your words or your actions. It's in what you unintentionally symbolize to him. It's in that quiet energy you radiate when you stop trying to unlove and simply exist as yourself. The less you cling to the need to be chosen, the more unforgettable you become. This isn't magic, it's psychology. Jung called it archetypal projection, the moment when someone doesn't fall for who you are, but for what you awaken within them. He may never say it out loud, but there was a moment he looked at you and saw more than a woman. He saw a symbol, a force, something that both intrigued and unsettled him. Have you ever felt unforgettable to someone without doing anything extraordinary? Has a man come back to you after months or years, without explanation? Perhaps it wasn't you he couldn't forget, but what you awakened in him. If you've felt this before, share your story, because these moments reveal truths about love that go far deeper than we realize. The paradox is this: men rarely fall in love with what they fully understand. They fall for what they can't fully grasp. They fall for what disrupts their inner balance, for the mystery that shakes their soul. When a woman lives in alignment with a truth, when she refuses to betray herself out of fear of losing him, her presence becomes magnetic. Not because she's trying to attract him, but because she embodies a rare authenticity. Sadly, many women lose themselves instead, molding their identity to what they think he wants. And that's when the spark fades. Not because love isn't there, but because the mystery that drew him in has disappeared. Jung once said, "What we repress becomes our destiny." When a woman suppresses her essence, she stops resonating with a man's soul. And here's what's fascinating. He often doesn't even know why he can't stop thinking about her. Why she lingers in his mind like a song he can't silence. Why, even after letting her go, she appears in his dreams. When a woman unknowingly represents an archetype he hasn't yet embraced, she becomes a mirror, and no one forgets the mirror that showed them their soul for the first time. Jung explained it beautifully. We don't love people for who they are, but for what they symbolize to us. When a woman effortlessly becomes a symbol in a man's unconscious, she triggers a pull far deeper than physical attraction. It's a force that feels ancient, awakening emotions he didn't know he carried. A man can meet countless women in his life. Some will make him laugh. Some will stand by him through hard times. Some he may even spend years with. But only one will remain etched in his soul. And she's rarely the most beautiful or flawless. She's almost always the one who never tried to be. The woman who walked in with quiet confidence, who didn't seek approval, who chose herself without apology. Without meaning to, she becomes the embodiment of his anima, the feminine energy within him that longs for integration. And when she enters his world, something deep within shifts. The irony? Most women who hold this power don't even realize it. They are not performing or posturing. They are simply being themselves. And that truth is deeply unsettling for a man who's only known shallow connections based on need or expectation. When this happens, he doesn't fall in love with her words or her beauty. He falls in love with a part of himself she reflects back. That hidden, uncharted part of his soul that suddenly comes alive. And that's terrifying. Because real love isn't comfortable, it's transformative. It forces him to face himself. That's why so many men pull away when the connection becomes real. Not because they don't care, but because they sense that this woman will change them. She awakens something they can't control, something they can't label. And so, they run. But they're not running from her. They are running from their own feelings. This is why you, as a woman, must not see this as rejection. If you've ever walked away from someone and couldn't understand why their absence cut so deeply, perhaps it wasn't about unrequited love. Perhaps you were the mirror he wasn't ready to face. Think about it. Have you ever been pushed away, not because of anything you did, but because of what you represented? Did that confusion linger? Share your story, because someone out there is feeling the same and needs to hear your truth. When a woman stops searching for love and fully steps into herself, her energy changes. It's not arrogance or indifference. It's a steady, silent confidence that speaks without words. I belong to myself. And to a man's unconscious mind, that energy is both alluring and destabilizing. Jung believed that what we don't integrate within ourselves, we search for in others. So, when a man meets a woman who embodies qualities he hasn't yet developed, intuition, emotional depth, spiritual freedom, he feels a stirring inside. And it's not always pleasant. Often, his first reaction is discomfort. Why? Because she reflects a part of himself as avoided for years. Maybe his entire life. His chased relationships where he could play the hero, be the protector, stay in control. But in front of a woman who doesn't need saving, who doesn't idolize him, who isn't desperate for his attention, he feels stripped of power. And that's often when obsession begins, not with her as a person, but with reclaiming the illusion of control that she shattered. What he doesn't realize is that he's not chasing her. He's chasing the part of himself that she awakened. That's why some men can't let go of a woman like this, even years later. She leaves a scar, not because of romance, but because she represents a before and after in his emotional life. Many men don't know how to handle that void. Instead of looking inward and taking responsibility for their wounds, they distract themselves. New women, work, hobbies. But nothing fills that space. Because what they lost wasn't just a person. It was a chance for transformation. And here's what most miss. That woman isn't unforgettable because she was perfect. She's unforgettable because she was authentic. Because she left the moment she realized staying would mean betraying herself. Because she didn't beg, didn't scream, didn't try to convince him. She closed the door with grace. And that quiet act of dignity leaves a lasting mark on a man's soul. To you who are listening, have you ever felt like your dignity was mistaken for coldness? That your silence was misread as disinterest, when really it was your way of honoring yourself? If so, share it. Someone out there needs to understand that letting go isn't weakness, it's self-preservation. Jung taught that the unconscious doesn't distinguish between reality and symbolism. That's why when a woman becomes a symbol in a man's mind, she ceases to be just a woman. She becomes an idea, a mirror, a reflection he can't forget. After losing her, a man may think he misses her physical presence. But what is truly grieving is a feeling she awakened, that mix of awe, confusion, and desire that defies logic. Because when a connection touches the soul, no amount of reasoning can provide closure. In her absence, his mind works overtime. He replays conversations, clings to memories, idealizes moments, but none of it brings back that original spark. Because he's not searching for her. He's searching for that inner state he only felt in her presence. And this is both tragic and beautiful, because the harder he tries to relive her in memory, the further he moves from the real work of integration. The work of asking himself, what part of me came alive through her? What emptiness surfaced when she left? The woman who doesn't compete, doesn't beg, doesn't cling. She embodies a quiet power that changes everything for a man. She doesn't embody the typical image of romance or beauty meant to please. She symbolizes freedom. And though that freedom stings, it also captivates, because deep within, every one of us longs for it. Yet few are willing to love from that place of freedom. For a man, encountering this kind of woman unknowingly sparks his journey toward individuation. Jung described this path as a turning point where we stop searching outside for what can only be discovered within. This transformation rarely begins with a grand revelation. It often begins with loss. Sometimes, all it takes is a single glance, a calm goodbye without blame, a door closing softly, to shatter man's inner world completely. Yet, within that collapse lies more than sorrow. It holds the seed of possibility. Because when everything familiar falls apart, new life can finally be built. Perhaps that is what cuts the deepest. She didn't cling to stay, didn't resist leaving. She understood a fundamental truth, that what is real never needs to be forced, and true love is never begged for. It is honored. Let me ask you with complete honesty, have you ever walked away from someone who couldn't see your worth? Did you choose yourself, even though it hurt? If so, share your story in the comments. Your words may reach and heal more hearts than you realize. When a conscious woman departs, a quiet transformation begins in the man left behind. At first, he tries to handle the pain like he always has, through distractions, replacements, denial. But This time is different. Nothing satisfies him. Nothing soothes him. This wasn't just another loss. This was a rupture within. Carl Jung spoke of turning points in the psyche, moments when life, without asking permission, forces us to confront what we've been avoiding. For many men, that woman who slipped away without drama or explanation becomes one of those pivotal points. Not because she intended to hurt him, but because her absence revealed a truth no one else dared to show him. Suddenly, he begins asking questions he never thought to ask. Why did I feel I needed her? Why does it hurt so deeply even though I hardly knew her? What part of me was I searching for in her? And in that sea of questions, the image he once held of himself begins to crack. He is no longer the man who controls everything, who avoids falling in love, who always holds the emotional power. He has become a vulnerable human being touched by a connection deeper than any before, a connection that transformed him. What she embodied through her silence, her independence, her authentic but unattached way of loving, was something he hadn't yet found within himself. She didn't enter his life to offer stability. She arrived to reveal the instability of his inner world. And though painful, that revelation marks the beginning of awakening. Many men resist this point of growth. They long to return to how things were, to bury the memory, to escape. But the soul doesn't work that way. Once awakened, it cannot go back to sleep. So amid the discomfort, some choose a different path. They pause, they breathe, they look inward. He begins reading, reflecting, questioning his childhood, his old relationships, the patterns he repeated without realizing it. He examines his need for validation, his fear of abandonment, his struggle to love without control. Slowly, he realizes she was never the problem. The real issue was a distorted image of her he had projected. This moment is critical because here lies the birth of integration, of finally understanding that what he sought outside must be built within. With time, the wound begins to heal, not through denial, but through acceptance, through humility, through the realization that love is so much greater than possession. And you, listening to this, maybe you've been there too. Maybe your presence was misunderstood. Maybe your leaving was seen as cold when in truth, your soul simply chose peace. If you recognize yourself in that, share your experience. Your truth could be the reflection someone else needs right now. As time passes, a subtle shift occurs, not loud or dramatic, but quiet. A new way of seeing awakens in him. He stops searching for her in other faces, stops chasing her in memories. He begins to understand what truly happened. Jung said individuation begins when we stop identifying with our masks. That is exactly what has unfolded here. He no longer sees himself as a conqueror or the one in control. He notices his cracks, and instead of fearing them, he starts to see them as the most human parts of himself. The woman who left without chaos or demands now appears differently in his mind. She is no longer the untouchable ideal. She is a woman who, without trying, revealed the depth of his own inner world. It's no longer about winning her back. It's about understanding what she awakened. And what she awakened wasn't just desire. It was presence, awareness, an invitation to come home to himself. What captivated him wasn't simply her silence, but what that silence reflected. A woman who didn't need validation to feel whole, who wouldn't sacrifice her peace to stay. In a world where men are taught that love is possession and connection is control, a woman who loves from freedom creates an inner revolution. She cannot be manipulated. She cannot be held against her will. She can only be honored, and that truth transforms him. He starts treating himself differently. He listens more deeply. He stops chasing love as a means of salvation. His goal is no longer to find someone to choose him despite his emptiness, but to become someone who chooses himself with honesty so that love can be real. In time, her image softens. The pain dulls. She becomes a radiant, almost sacred memory, the one who unknowingly sparked his soul's awakening, not to stay, but to guide him forward. And to the women listening, if your love has ever been misunderstood, if you've chosen to leave rather than betray yourself, know this: those decisions are never forgotten. Even if no one told you, even if he never fully understood, you planted something within him. That seed, though it grew silently, changed a life. Have you ever felt that your energy left a lasting impression on someone without you even trying? That your absence spoke louder than any forced presence? If so, share your story below. It could be the light someone else is searching for. There comes a point when obsession fades, replaced by understanding. It's no longer about needing her near. It's about recognizing that she was a turning point, a before and after in his life. Not because of what she said, but because of how she lived and how she left. Jung believed that what moves us deeply remains with us as a symbol. A symbol doesn't fade. It doesn't need to be present to keep working within us. And that's what happened with her. She may be gone, yet her presence lingers, like a melody that keeps echoing long after the music ends. He begins to see more clearly. He notices that for years, he sought relationships that made him feel validated, important, needed. But with her, it was different. There was no struggle, no dependency, only choice. That disarmed him because no one had ever taught him how to love freely. No one had ever shown him he could be vulnerable without losing dignity, that he didn't have to be needed to be deeply loved. She taught him that, not through words, but through her presence and her absence. And here is where true transformation begins. He no longer seeks women to fill a void. He no longer tries to patch his feelings with new stories. Now he knows love is not something to demand or earn. It is something to share, from wholeness, not from lack. The most beautiful part? She no longer needs to do anything. She doesn't have to return, explain herself, or prove her worth. Her role has been fulfilled. She was a catalyst, a lighthouse, a mirror. Her energy did what it came to do. It woke him up. And to you watching this, have you ever been the starting point of someone's awakening, even if the relationship didn't last? Did you feel that something stayed with them forever, even if they never said it aloud? If this resonates, share your story. Sometimes, sharing our truth is the most profound way to heal. In this new chapter, he no longer runs from himself. He understands now that everything he once sought in her, the calm, the depth, the freedom, he can create within. Maybe not overnight, maybe not without effort, but with every choice, he moves closer to his truth. And the curious thing is, he no longer feels a need to find her in someone else. When he remembers her now, it's not with longing, but gratitude. Because she was the one who showed him that real love isn't about staying. It's about leaving a lasting imprint. Where emptiness once lived, there is now understanding. The pain has softened. The unanswered questions no longer torment him. He sees life differently, more calmly, more honestly, more awake. For once a man crosses a threshold into his own soul, he can never love the same way again. Carl Jung said that what we accept within ourselves transforms us. And that's exactly what happened. The man who once needed to be chosen to feel worthy now knows his value isn't tied to being desired. It's in being authentic. He no longer seeks love from a place of emptiness. He loves from a place of wholeness.